One of the hardest things parents and teachers have to deal with is their children's intense tantrums. Now, this typically happens when something doesn't go the way the child expected. So that could be transitioning from dinner time to bedtime, an activity to another activity, leaving a playground, and of course, from their device to dinner. But there's also like the more micro transitions, things like changing out of their favorite green t-shirt or finding their toy in the bin beside their usual bin, right? These transitions appear to be experienced as jarring, right? And they result at times in high level distress, okay? Like seriously high level distress. Now, this sudden high level distress from the child, what it does, it sets off alarm bells for the parent or the teacher who is witnessing this. We feel shocked and like totally confused because everything was fine a second ago, and now everything is out of control. And then we're sitting there trying to make sense of it, but that's the thing, right? There is no logical sense to it. So now what's going on? We have two humans, the child and the parent, who are both now feeling high levels of distress and overwhelm. So one of them, the child, has not developed the skills yet to regulate themselves. And the other, who's having what feels like a traumatic response to the suddenness, the intensity, the nonsensical nature of this outburst, is also overwhelmed. And if they haven't learned how to regulate their own system, then they too are in this state with the child, right? And just as an aside, if it's, to make things worse, as a child gets older and becomes even more verbal and stronger physically, the parent or teacher might even get hit in these moments or screamed at in like insanely attacking kinds of ways. Like it just feels over the top, right? So the reality is that in those moments, at some level, the adult in that situation knows that the child doesn't mean what they're saying or what they're doing in that moment. But on another level, because parents and teachers are also human, we feel threatened, right? And then we often lose it with the child. So we might like yell or threaten to take something away if they don't stop the insanity, because that's what it feels like. We are totally like overtaken by this need to defend and punish. And I get it, like I honestly get it, because it is so huge and overwhelming. And again, we are humans, so we are going to get activated by that. So I completely understand how hard this dynamic is, right? So let's look at a typical scenario that's pretty common. The child is playing with a toy. Right? You come in and say very kindly, "All right, babe, it's time to get ready for dinner. Put the toy back." They ignore you. You ask again, nothing. You're tired already and you just need them to listen. And you forget the golden rule of empathy first and then the task, right? So I get that we're tired. Remembering to say, "Hey, sweetheart, I know you really want to play with that toy right now, or you're still playing and you want to stay in this space, or you're still watching TV or whatever it is they're doing." You saying that, remembering to say that part first, and it's time for dinner in 5 minutes, is very difficult. So have compassion for yourself. That it's a training process to remember to do that ahead of time, right? Like in the process. So now I want to go back to the scene. Okay, so we've just asked kindly, without the empathy part, just kindly, "Hey, it's time for dinner in a minute. Please put your toy away." Right? Now we're getting impatient because they're not listening. So now you go to take the toy yourself. So you can put it away and get on with the day. But right now you can do that maybe because you're bigger and stronger, right? So you manage to take it away and put it away, all with an intolerant energy, keep in mind. So then out of nowhere, your child has a complete and utter meltdown, right? This is that moment where it's so disproportionate in your mind to what's happening. So the child that you're looking at is no longer yours, but more like a monster from the movie Aliens, right? Your eyebrows rise, your eyes widen, and you feel complete like terror and confusion. It's a bit traumatic, right, for us. to see this little person turn into this alien monster. So you might even start feeling like you can't breathe. Your animal instincts start to kick in, and you are now responding from a fight, flight, or freeze state. Unfortunately, in these situations with our kids, most of us do choose the fight stance. So we pull the screaming punishment card, and the screaming gets louder from both parties. Does this sound familiar? So obviously this is extremely exhausting, especially if it's happening every day. So which for so many of us it is. And in the perfect world, we would just quit, right? This job, I never asked for this job. I want to quit. And we want to run away. Well, we did. The problem is we did ask for the job. And so we technically can't quit. Now we're stuck. So here we are, we're escalated, we're elevated. And some part of you is also thinking, was I cursed with an alien child? Like, why do I have this kid? What did I do to deserve this? I'm a nice person. I'm a good person. I don't get it. And of course you are. Of course you're a great person. And this is an incredibly overwhelming cycle that is not sustainable. Yet it feels like, what else can I do? I just have to get into this battle. We have to get to dinner, right? So you're thinking in your mind, I truly tried to be kind and gentle when I started this interaction. And I said, it's time to put your toy away. I was so nice. I was genuine, right? So how did we get here again? So of course, going back to what I said in the beginning, what's a possible solution? Empathy, right? But the thing is that these things can happen really quickly, and we often forget the empathy until we really train ourselves. So when we've missed the empathy, right, and things happen so quickly, and our child is in monster alien mode, now using empathy is too late, right? So what can we do? In my mind, it's all about expectations. So normally I'm actually very against having any kind of expectations when it comes to parenting, but that's another story. But in this case, right, I need you to expect the transition, okay, to be extremely difficult, right? Start noticing your patterns with your child. So many kids don't like change, right? It's literally overwhelming to their system. Some even say unexpected change for a young mind can feel like a threat to their identity, right? That moving from what I'm doing right now is my identity in this moment when they're little, right? And then shifting them away from that. It's like, no, you're tearing me away from who I am. This is all I know, because they're so beautifully in the moment, right? Yet we know we have to get on with the day. So we just expect them to move to the next without any issues. But that's where we get stuck. Right? We need to start expecting that the transition will be hard for them, right? Now you might say to me, look, I've done this sort of thing. I've given them a timer. I've given them 5-minute warnings. I've done all these things. And sometimes those are really helpful, and they aren't foolproof, right? Sometimes the kids just don't pay attention to what's outside of their little world that they're focused on in that moment. Whether it's TV, whether it's something they're playing with, whatever that might be, right? Whether it's on the playground. So the transition itself, you can expect for a lot of kids, is a tantrum trigger, right? And we are shocked at the tantrum, right? Because we don't understand why this is happening. And what I'm getting at here is, this is what's happening, right? The transition is a trigger to a tantrum for many children. Okay, I just want to drill that again. All right, so that if we can start to understand that the transition itself is a trigger, then we can start to expect it, and then we won't enter into this cycle. Remember the cycle I said before, where we both end up escalating? We don't need to participate in that, because if we understood it from their perspective and expected it to possibly happen, we just wouldn't be so shocked when it did. Right? Does that make sense? I'm not saying we should walk on eggshells. Oh no, is this going to be a transition thing? I'm saying take a breath and know this next transition may not go well, and that's okay. Right? It's okay, because if I expect it, I will be able to calm them, right, as they experience the difficulty of the transition, because I will be calm myself. So Who in the world can pull off what I just asked you to do? Well, I mean, the Dalai Lama comes to mind. He's been trained to accept every situation with grace and calm. And so wouldn't it be so nice to be able to do that? But no, I mean, I'm not asking you to become the Dalai Lama, although I do highly encourage 15 minutes of meditation a couple times a day. And I'm not asking for you to become a Zen master, right? Not necessarily in this lifetime. However, when we prepare ourselves for transitions to be challenging, we will have a much higher chance of responding like a Zen master rather than a co-alien. All right. We are human. So preparing or expecting and understanding that transitions are triggering a threat response in our children helps us stay in our own rational brain and make helpful choices while they tantrum. Right? So it could look like this. They tantrum. We take a breath and accept that they're in a tantrum right now. If we're feeling a bit overwhelmed, it's okay. But because we're expecting it, we can also take a pause and show ourselves some compassion that this is hard, and then help ourselves, right? So for example, how do I help myself in that moment? As long as we know the child is safe, just let them know, even in their tantrum, hey, I'm gonna be in the other room for a minute and just step out, right? You're not mad at them. Okay. You're not showing any intolerance. You're just like, no, I can't do this. So I need to step out for a moment, right? If you do this, the child's tantrum will be shorter lived, right? As long as there's somebody else, there isn't somebody else, joining in the outrage with them or the fury with them, they'll have a chance to let it peak and then start coming down. So then when you return, they're starting to calm, right? Or at least beginning to understand. Maybe they'll get into that stage, where they're like kind of breathing and trying to regulate themselves. And then you can start showing them empathy, right? And then guide them to dinner. All right. So of course, there's going to be many days when the tantrum doesn't end in a few minutes, like I just said. And sometimes whatever just happened felt like to the child that the world was ending. So in those cases, we can remind ourselves that the world actually won't end, right? Even if we start dinner late, and know that our child is okay. This is just a normal transition, and allow the tantrum to be expressed. All right. It might be a nuisance, but it will be a much better evening if we let this child release their big emotions with acceptance before we shift gears into the next thing we need to do. So I was saying, you may have seen surrender and soothe. That's really critical here, because when we get to know our child and learn to expect those meltdowns or tantrums, and you will start to see patterns, right? We then need to surrender to the temporary alien, so not engage, and then soothe ourselves, right? We need the soothing. And my favorite self-soothing technique is one that's done by Dr. Peter Levine. It's called the self-hug. And this is how it will look. So you take your right hand, you put it under your left underarm, kind of covering your heart area, and your left hand goes over your right arm like this. And that's it. You just kind of sit with that. So you're maybe in the other room and you're just holding yourself, hugging, because it was startling for you, and feel yourself start to calm. Okay. And then when we return, right, we will be calmer. And the little alien will ultimately resonate to our calm energy and return to being our amazing little person. So I hope you found that helpful. Please join me next week when we will process the question, am I failing as a parent if my child doesn't seem happy or isn't doing well in school? Thanks so much.